Hello, my name is Darren Thomas, and I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. In this video, we're going to look at using arrays in Excel VBA. So let's go ahead and see what we can learn. So right here, you have a picture, a very simple picture of what an array might look like in Microsoft Excel. By array, what we mean is we're talking about multiple columns and multiple rows in Microsoft Excel. So let me see if I can make this a little bit clearer for you. So pretend for a second we are inside Microsoft Excel. This is my column A. This is my column B right here. This is row 1, row 2, row 3. And so you can see clearly here that we have multiple rows and columns. And that is why this would be considered an Excel for our purposes. And so of course we would have some numbers inside here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so this is our array. And now if you're familiar a little bit with mathematics and computer programming, the beauty of arrays is that you can do calculations on all of the different rows and columns simultaneously. And so when we get to the coding part in this video, we're going to take an array and multiply it by 2. Now in order to have success to do this inside Excel VBA, you have to use nested for loops. In other words, when we're normally doing this in computers, programming a lot of times, we always kind of call the rows I. So this is I1, I guess, I2, whatever, I. And then of course we have the columns, we call these J. They're lowercase. It's not like that. It should be they're lowercase j's normally. And so what happens is that you have to have a nested for loop where you have the I on the outside for I, etc. And then inside that you have for J. And so what happens is this: the outer loop is going to run first. So when we start, we're going to start right here because this is our first row. It's going to start right here in the first row. That's what it's going to do. And then after that, it's going to run the information for the inner loop, which is dealing with the columns. And so after we find I1, then we're going to find, okay, what is J1? And then after we're done with J1, we're going to go to J2 like so. And when J2 is done, we go back to the outer loop and we move now to I2. And then we do J1 again and J2 again. Then we move to I3 and then we do J3 like that. Excuse me, J3, no, that'd be J5 and J6, excuse me. And so this is kind of how this works. And by doing this, you're able to do whatever you want in terms of your desire with Excel VBA. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to move to Excel VBA and try to put this in coding as simple as possible. So here we're inside Microsoft Excel. And what we need to do now is to the left, you can see our array here. Now this has to be selected like this in order to work in our purpose here. So you can see that we have a 3x3 array, which means 3 rows and 3 columns. And so now we need to go inside VBA right here to the right and try to set up our subroutine. So our subroutine is called, excuse me, make the slightest, subroutine is called ×2. And so we're going to just make it simple like that. And so we need to dim our I. We need to dim our J variable. Again, I is going to be keeping track of our rows and the J will be keeping track of the columns. However, there's other things we have to do. We have to communicate with the subroutine how many rows and how many columns we have all together. So we have to create a variable that will keep track of those things and we have to count them. Those are other things we have to do. So dim I as integer, then put a comma here. Let me just put J as integer. All right, and then go back here. NR is going to stand for number of rows. And then because I'm running out of space, can I squeeze it in here? Let's see here. NC as integer. Okay, we got it. Okay, so I dimmed all of the variables that I need. I is for the rows, J is for the columns, NR is going to save our information for the number of rows. NC is going to save our information for the number of columns. Now for NR, this is what we will do. We're going to put selection dot rows dot count. So it's going to count the number of rows in my highlighted selection, which is right here off to the left. And then I repeat this process. So I'm just going to copy this and make some changes to it. So instead of NR, it's going to be NC because now we're counting the columns. And instead of using the rows function, we're going to use the columns function. That's what we're doing here. Now moving on, we're going to create our for loop. So we're going to have an outer for loop that's going to deal with our rows, and then we're going to have an inner for loop that deals with the columns. So we're going to do for I 1, 2 NR. This is what we're going to do for J 1, 2 NC. That's what we're going to do here. And now this is where it gets a little hard to understand. So we're going to do selection dot cell, and inside that we're going to have I and J, whatever position we're at, whatever row, whatever column, we're going to select that. And then this is what we're going to do. We're going to do selection dot cell again, I comma J, whatever position we're at, times 2. So in other words, whatever position we're in, whether it's 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, whatever row and column we're in, we're going to take that row and column and multiply it by 2. That is why we call it the times 2 subroutine. After that, we need to do next J, or in other words, next column, if you will. And then from there, we need to do next I, next row. Okay, well, looks like everything is okay here. Let's run this and see how it does. So I'm going to press. Okay, we're ready to try to run our code now. So we're going to start right here at the top. And so we're going to go ahead and press F8. You can see that all my variables have been declared. I, J, NR, and NC. And so now we're going to count the number of rows. You can see there's a small number 3 here if you look at the lower right hand part of your screen. And then we do this for the columns. You can see we got a 3 again because there are 3 columns of data here. Now we're going to go into our for loop. And so you have to try to look at the right hand part of your screen where the code is, and also look at the left hand where the actual array is off to the left here. So this is my array over here, and watch how the for loop does its work. So we select the first row in the first column. That's why we have a 1, 1 here. And so now watch how these values are going to start changing, and on the left hand side. So if you notice here real quick, you saw this 1 over here that used to be in cell A1 change to a 2. Going to go through this again. Now you should have saw B1 change. Next is going to be C1. C1 just changed. Next will be A2. There you go. You can see it. Going through, B2 just changed. Next will be C2. Then we had A3. Now B3. And then we had C3. Now if we keep going, we'll just go back to the top, and it'll go on forever, and it'll keep multiplying. You can see that if you really want to. We're just, practicing this. You can see how it kind of keeps repeating itself like that. So we're done for now. So it won't really exit until you kind of stop messing with it. But for our purposes, our goal was not to make a perfect subroutine that knows when to quit. We were trying to go through the process of fixing this. And so if you keep pressing F8, it'll just go back to the top and run itself again. That's what I was trying to say. So for our purposes, that's what we did, was we learned how to make a selection of an array and how to have VBA go through and do whatever we wanted. In this example, we just had it multiply the values inside the array by 2. And so in order to make this happen, you must make a for loop and a nested for loop. And by nested, we mean that there's a loop inside a loop. That's what we had to do here. And so that's essentially what we did. Also, I forgot to mention we had to count the number of rows and the number of columns, but you can see how to do that right there in the third and fourth line of our code over here, right here. And that's how this works. So by itself, what we learned right now doesn't have much application. However, when we begin to discuss more complex ideals and concept that you can implement in VBA, being able to know how to manipulate arrays using code can be very, very valuable. So, my name is Darren Thomas. I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.